right, so I've currently got Janie on the line. She's another musician that reached out about the current interview series. So I'm going to go ahead and give her the chance to introduce herself.
Well, my name's Janie. I've been a violinist all my life. I have been with symphonies. The Alabama Symphony I was with for 10 years and played chamber music, got into jazz, play jazz fiddle now. I love improv. I love teaching. I have my master's degree in music. So basically I get up every morning and I think, okay, what am I going to practice first? Or actually, I'm thinking about it when I go to bed the night before. So a day doesn't go by that I don't play.
Sure. Excellent. So on that note of days going by, let's go back to the first days. And, what about it, about music specifically, did you find that, really latched onto you and made you want to like participate it on a larger scale?
That's really difficult to answer because I've been asked that before. And my very first conscious memories when I was 4 or 5 years old, I wanted piano lessons. We didn't have a piano. Mm-hmm. And some of my friends, were playing piano. So I go over to their house and learn their piano lessons. And I would bug them to death. I figured out how to figure out the notes in the bass and treble clef. And every time I got to a piano, I'd pull out their book and learn some more. And so I never did get piano lessons till I got to college. But later on, they offered violin in the public schools and we had a violin. So that was what I took. And that's the only thing I ever wanted to do in my whole life was play. And once I found violin, I wanted to play in the symphony, which I ended up being able to do. So, and I'm the only one in my family that even reads music. So they have no idea where I came from.
They're just confused about where all this musicality developed from.
Yeah, there's nobody in the family that even likes music that much.
Sure. So what was it like kind of growing up in that environment where you were constantly striving to, learn more about music and participate more, and then having, your support structure around you, not really sure how to give support?
Well, and it wasn't that they didn't want to support me. They didn't know how to support me. And back then, the teachers, like now, I educate my parents on how to support their children. But that wasn't done then. You were dropped off at your music lesson and picked up. Mm-hmm. So my parents were glad. I mean, they could afford the lessons. They were glad to pay for my lessons. Probably because I was going to 3 music lessons a week when I turned 16. That's why I got my own car. So that I could drive myself. I got a little Volkswagen to drive myself to my music lessons and rehearsals.
Sure.
But it was difficult because I did not have other friends to play with. There was the youth orchestra in Birmingham, and that was a good thing. But basically, there wasn't a lot of outlet, and my parents didn't understand what I was doing. They made sure I was on time to things, but that was basically it.
Sure. So I know this question seems kind of silly, but just to get some details about it, once you did kind of get into the realm of being skilled and playing with your school band and everything, what was kind of the deciding factor and the motivation to want to continue on and play with the symphony?
Well, the thing is, we didn't have school orchestra.
Oh.
So I had a little bit of youth orchestra, and then I managed to get into the Pops Orchestra, which was the summer orchestra. Once I was about 22, something like that. And my first real orchestra rehearsal, when I saw that downbeat for Der Rosenkavalier, I nearly had a heart attack because where I went to college, there was no orchestra.
Sure.
So I did not have that orchestral experience. And so I wanted to do it so badly that every time I got knocked down, I would take a couple of days and cry my eyeballs out and then come back with even more resolve to do it. And finally, I got to where I was accepted and I could actually play.
Sure. So, you mentioned that you didn't have, a music program in school going through like middle school and high school. You mentioned that you didn't have one in college. So all of those years you were just committed to doing the private lessons, just learning that way?
Yep, that's what I did. And I wanted to, do this. And I took lessons from, anybody that I could get in with. I mean, like I said, my parents were happy to pay for lessons. I had a wonderful, they're both deceased now, couple. I took voice lessons from the wife, and the guy was Bob Barrett was a wonderful viola player in Birmingham. And I took violin lessons from him.
Okay.
And later we became colleagues, but they were so patient and so good. I learned so much from them, and they were very encouraging. But I did end up later on, there was no violinist in the college that I went to, so I quit and studied with the concertmaster in the Atlanta Symphony, Bill Steck. And that was good. A 3-hour drive to go have a music lesson.
Oh, geez. So you did mention there that, you kind of hinted at the fact that you tried out a few times and for whatever reason didn't make the part. You buckled down, studied some more. How many times do you think you've tried out to participate in symphonies?
Well, I think I tried out. I got in the Pops Orchestra the first time, and then then I tried out for the symphony and didn't make it the first time, and made it the second time. And I really think it wasn't because I played so well. I've always thought to this day that, they had the budget for an extra fiddle player, and this was before there were 100 people auditioning for every chair, and they didn't want to lose that money, so they hired somebody. Okay. And I was there. And so that first year, every single piece of music that came my way, I had never seen before. And I just worked constantly, and I learned to play violin playing in that symphony with all those wonderful musicians that were there. I learned from everybody around me all the time.
Sure, absolutely. There's probably not a better environment to be in to, kind of learn to really hone your craft that way.
Well, especially when I first started, we were doing 7 services a week. And so that's a lot of playing plus extra gigs.
Yeah.
And so, I tell my parents, the students, parents of my students, the first thing you got to do is get the violin in their hands. You got to have fun. You got to get them playing, and then we can be more and more directed as to the quality of their practice. But if they don't have the fiddle in their hands, then they can't do anything. And I think that was a lot of it. I just lived with my fiddle in my hands all day long, every day.
Sure. So you did mention that you had a master's degree and that you were teaching. So if I put 2 and 2 together, can I assume that the master's degree is in teaching?
Let's see. Yes, it's music education.
Okay.
And I didn't get it until after I finished playing in the symphony because I was busy with kids and everything. And so later on, I went back and got that so that I could teach public school, which I hated. So I didn't do that very long.
How many years did you do public school for?
Well, I did it for 3 years. And when my late husband asked me to marry him, I said I do, and I quit. So,
nice.
After coming from 10 years of playing in a professional symphony, I expected those public school kids to just walk in, sit down, and wait for a downbeat. It didn't work that way.
Yeah, I bet not.
Yeah. So I went to Suzuki School. I went to those institutes.
Okay.
And that was the best pedagogy that I had ever had. And the quality was very high. And I started a music school and a music store. And my husband and I did that. And he was a trumpet player. Okay. So that was really good. But that's where I really learned to teach was working with, it's a combination of traditional and Suzuki.
Okay. And then was it around that same time that you decided to start doing like kind of freelance stuff as well?
Well, I had been doing freelance stuff since, anybody would cross my palm with silver because I was hungry. And the whole time through the 10 years in the symphony, we were the ones that got hired for the ice shows and the operas and ballets and everything in towns. There were some years I played like 300 times. So, and the road shows,
Okay.
the musicals that came to town. So I did a lot of that. And I always usually had either a piano trio or a string quartet. But my husband died in 1999. And, I needed something that I could throw myself into with a passion.
Sure.
And I had always wanted, Sarah Vaughan sang with us. I think it was Sarah Vaughan, when I was in the symphony. And it was just so beautiful. She was singing jazz, and yet it was as wonderful as Mozart. And I said, I want to know more about that, but I didn't have the time.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of my husband's friends were kind, and they started teaching me about jazz. And since then, I found some teachers and just kept working at it. And I've gotten some level of expertise with it.
Cool. So, you're obviously still involved in playing. What currently do you have going on? Do you still have the store? Are you still giving lessons? You're still out there freelancing?
Well, I left Columbus, Georgia, and moved to Florida because my children are here, and so I'm kind of starting over again. And I moved to Claremont right when we got locked down. So. Not long last year, I said, I can't deal with this. I just called up a retirement place close to me and said, you want me to come play for your residents there? I got to get out of the house and play. I'm tired of practicing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that. And then I found out after a couple of weeks, the girl said, we need to be paying you for this. I said, you pay for this? So I said, yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. Well, then I started getting calls and things. And so now I'm on the list for a bunch of them, and I play about once a week, and it's all from memory. So I don't like using backup tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So I interact with the people, and it's from memory, so I can stroll in a restaurant. So at Valentine's, I had a really nice gig strolling in a restaurant.
Oh, bad.
And, yeah, that's fun. It kills you, but it's fun. And I've started teaching again. And so I've got, 5 or 6 hours of teaching a week and building that up. And there's this guy in New Jersey, and I'll give him a plug because he's wonderful. His name's Thomas Frioli. And I had to do something to keep myself occupied while we were not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I found him online, and he taught jazz fiddle. And he's all over YouTube. I thought, this guy I want to study with. And that's what he does. He teaches online.
Awesome.
So I took lessons from him for a year while we were locked down, and I learned so much.
Awesome. Yeah,
it was great.
That's a great time to just buckle down and do something like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could practice all day long every day because nobody, you couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was how I used my time, and he was wonderful, yeah.
So, with all the time that you spent in music, what are some of like your favorite memories that have happened to you, while you've been, participating?
Oh gosh, I think the people that I've met and the other wonderful musicians that I've learned from and my teachers, but specifically, oh gosh, that stand out in my memory was getting to do rehearsals and shows. I think it was 9 of them with Richard Harris when he brought Camelot to Columbus. He was just that whole company was wonderful, and the show was wonderful. And we did what was that? I'm thinking. Oh yeah, an oratorio, Joan of Arc, I think it was. And I remember at the end of that, the feeling I had. It was just so magical on stage with those other musicians and the choir and everything. I think it was about a week before I came down off of that performance.
Nice.
So, things like that. That you're on stage and you're doing the best you can, And the whole thing is so much bigger than you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That it really is magical. I do miss that big orchestra playing and being able to play with all those musicians.
Sure, absolutely. So, where can people find you, whether it be social media or, book you to come play at an event? How can people get a hold of you?
Oh, well, I use Facebook. I tried a website, but that was just too complicated for me. So I'm on Facebook. I'm just Mary Jane Weise, Weise on Facebook. And I get my local gigs by doing that. And I do there's one of these crafters markets that's once a month here. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of an in your face kind of person. I just go out there and I rent my little space for a few dollars and I go play violin.
Sure.
And I've got a little sign that says, talk to me about violin lessons or your wedding or anything about music. And people come up and they sign up for lessons with me and I get to know them. And I've got several that, there's always some ongoing that I'm following up on. So I meet people that way too.
That's very cool. It's very street level marketing.
Yeah, well, they don't let you do street musician. You can't busk here.
Right.
So that's about as close to it as I can get.
Sure. Awesome. So I always like to give the person that I'm interviewing the opportunity to, put out a message, their last word, something that they just want to throw out there and, kind of vibe with.
Well, I think music is important to everybody, and it doesn't matter whether you're in the audience, that's important too, or whether you're playing. And you're never too old to learn to play. I have never run into anybody that could not learn to play competently if they wanted to, or at least pleasingly. Now, if you start in your 70s, you're not going to make Carnegie Hall, but you can learn some stuff and enjoy it. So make music a part of your life.